Hello and welcome to Illinois Law. Illinois Law is a public service program brought to you by the Illinois State Bar Association. My name is Karen White from the law firm of Smith Amundsen LLC in Chicago, and I will be today's moderator. Today's topic is taxes and filing your tax return. We're going to go over some basic considerations that you would want to think about when approaching filing your tax return. With us today are three distinguished panelists, or extinguished. Jamie Krupp is with us. He is a partner with the law firm of Krupp & Krupp in DeKalb, Illinois. It's his own practice with his father and his uncle. He practices law. He's been practicing law for about 10 years, and he concentrates his practice in estate planning, elder law, business succession planning, and income tax planning for individuals and small businesses. He is also a member of the ISBA Federal Taxation Section Council. Welcome, Jamie.
Thank you.
We also have Nancy Strauss. Nancy is an attorney and a CPA. She's been practicing as an accountant and as an attorney for over 20 years. She has her own practice called Nancy Franks-Straus LTD in Chicago, and she focuses her practice on taxation and estate planning. Ms. Strauss has a master's in taxation and is also a certified financial planner. Welcome, Nancy. You're very qualified for us today. We also have Larry Krupp. He's an attorney as well as a CPA, and he's been doing both for over 30 years. He is currently a director of the accounting firm of Kessler, Orlean and Silver, and he specializes in employee benefits, not-for-profit organizations, and individual taxation. Mr. Krupp is also an ISBA member of the Federal Taxation Section Council and the Employee Benefits Council. He is also a frequent speaker on accounting and tax topics, presenting in front of various professional and charitable organizations. Thanks, Larry, for being with us.
Thank you.
So I just want to get to the nuts and bolts of filing your tax return. And the first question I have, Nancy, I will throw it to you, is there really such thing as a 1040 easy, and is it really that easy? How do I know whether I can file a tax return on my own or whether I should hire somebody?
Well, to answer your question, there really is a 1040 easy.
Is it really that easy, though?
No. We're talking taxes.
Right.
So in taxes, my stock answer would be nothing is really as it seems. And while there is a 1040 EZ, there's also a 1040A. There's a 1040. There are various schedules that should and could be attached to the 1040. So while many people may find that their taxes are not that difficult, you really need to be very careful, very meticulous in looking over the rules to figure out exactly what you need to file, where you need to file it, and by when you need to file it.
Larry, how do I know whether I have a more difficult tax return that would require assistance, or whether I can actually try to tackle it on my own? What sort of things do I need to consider?
Well, normally you may want to consider assistance when you've got something out of the ordinary. Perhaps you've bought a home, you've sold a home, you've either gotten married or divorced, perhaps a family member's died and you've gotten part of an inheritance. So anything that's out of the ordinary, you may want to consider having a tax practitioner help you.
And why is that? Why, when I sell a piece of real estate, why would that make it more difficult?
Well, there's just different deductions that, as trained professionals, we all know certain expenses that may be part of the sales price, but some may be deductible, other ones aren't. And it's just, something that you can go to the tax return prepare software out there, the commercial software, and even though they say they ask all the questions, sometimes they may not know the follow-up question, and it's better to do it, one-on-one, face-to-face, where the practitioner can ask you some follow-up questions to make sure that you report all your income, but more importantly, you get all your deductions.
And Jamie, why is it more difficult if I was married? Or divorced, for that matter?
If you were divorced
what
during
are
the year, one issue that might arise would be whether you would be able to claim as a dependent your children, depending on who has custody of them. There are rules on who can claim a child as a dependent or to what extent. So you wouldn't want to be in the situation where you claim 2 or 3 or 4 dependents, however many children you have, but you're not in fact entitled to do so.
What determines whether you can claim a child as a deduction or not in a divorce situation?
In a divorce, custody is one issue, and also the legal obligations to support that are usually part of a divorce decree also come into play.
Yeah, a lot of times it'll be set forth in the divorce decree, along with another issue is alimony or maintenance, where it should be set in the divorce decree, but unfortunately sometimes our fellow members of the bar who practice family law may not know the intricacies of income tax law, and therefore it's important to have a tax professional look over the divorce decree, both for the husband and the wife, to make sure that what is stated as maintenance actually is maintenance.
Right, there are different types of money a party to divorce might receive, like alimony or maintenance or a lump sum settlement, and all of those can have different income tax consequences.
How about if somebody gets divorced in the middle of a tax year? Are you able to file a joint return? Does anybody know that? I don't know.
No. The answer is that
no.
The answer is that you look at your marital status at the end of the year, on December 31st. So if someone got married on New Year's Eve and they said I do before midnight, they can file a joint return. If they said I do after midnight, now it's 2011 and they'll have to file as individuals for 2010. And in case anybody's thinking that it might be better to get divorced on December 31st and remarried on January 1st, the IRS is up to date on that, and
how can they
really
figure that
don't
out?
allow that. Pardon?
How can they figure that out? Yeah.
Well, because they just see a pattern of divorce, remarriage, and also
Sure.
Yeah.
What other considerations? What instances are there when it is simple enough that I could file my own 1040 easy? Nancy.
You mean who would qualify
Yes.
to file a 1040 EZ? Boy, you're really
I focus on that because I remember doing it when I was 16, so.
Well, when you were 16, chances are you earned less than $100,000.
True.
And I believe you can have interest income, and that's about it.
So the income is very...
And you could not be self-employed. I mean,
Right.
You wouldn't, of course, itemize deductions. It would basically be wages or pension.
Right. But there are certain people that can just file their own 1040.
Right.
Where you may not need a paid preparer, such as, if you just have a W-2 and, maybe a bank account, your mortgage and trust.
Well, depending on one's comfort level with numbers and or computer software or math or even the whole tax thing is, for some people, if they have wages, a little interest income, well, not in this economy, but if they had a little interest income and then maybe owned a house and had real estate taxes and mortgage interest to take as an itemized deduction, I would say that's a pretty simple return.
Sure.
Now, for client A, that may be a very simple return, and for somebody else, they may run out of the room screaming, saying, "I don't know where to put this." So, there can be very simple returns. I know of people that have filed their returns for years and years and years until the tax law just got so complicated with the dividends and this capital gains tax that they threw up their hands in despair and hired a tax preparer.
Jamie, if I wanted to try to file my return on my own, what's a good resource that I could use to figure out if I'm claiming the right deductions and I'm filling out the form correctly?
The IRS website is very helpful and has very useful information on several tax topics. The IRS has publications that comprehensively address those topics. So for example, there's a publication for child and dependent expenses and exemptions. There is a publication for the business use of your home. So that's one way where those things can help you answer questions. But like Nancy said, if you can't answer those questions on your own, you're probably better off asking someone who can.
And the website for the IRS?
That's irs.gov.
Okay.
And if you go to forms and publications, if you click on forms and publications, You can search either by a topical index or by a form number if you're looking for Form 1040 or a publication number.
All right. I don't want to file my tax return on my own. I want to hire somebody. Larry, how do I figure out who is the right person to hire?
Okay. Generally, you know, you have to identify, you know, how many issues. If it's something like, you know, Nancy said, which is, you know, I just don't want to deal with numbers and all, but it's really not a complicated return, then you could just go to a tax practitioner. Now, what's important to know for 2011 is that all tax return preparers have to be registered with the IRS, whether they're attorneys, CPAs, or other certifications, or if they're just an accountant, someone who just is preparing returns. So when you look for someone, you need to ask whether they're registered with the IRS, because all tax preparers have to be, you know, registered.
And the reason behind that is what?
The IRS is just concerned that anybody can hang out a sign that says tax return prepare. And as the laws get more complicated, as there's more deductions, more credits, more interrelationship of the law, that they want to make sure that the people preparing returns are qualified and knowledgeable. And in the future, there's also going to be competency exams for all return preparers. And if you're looking for someone, probably the best place to start is just asking a neighbor or friend or a relative if they have a tax preparer and if they would recommend that person.
So a tax preparer isn't necessarily a CPA?
Correct.
Or an attorney?
Correct.
It's just somebody who would have knowledge regarding, hopefully somebody who would have
some knowledge. Correct.
Regarding filling out the tax returns.
Correct. Right now, it's not a licensing requirement. It's just a registration requirement.
Okay. And then what are some other avenues? I know there's services, but you know, commercial services.
Right. Right.
How are those viewed? Are those people in 2011, I'm sorry, have to be registered as well?
Yes.
With the IRS?
Yes.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to get back talking about how to find that right person to prepare your tax returns. And then we're going to go into what you need to put together in order to fill out your returns. We'll be right back.
Bye-bye, Tyler.
Dear, it's time for serious talk.
Oh?
About my daycare. When I started out, it was just to help the neighbors. But lately, it's getting to be a real handful. I need some help.
What can I do?
I need advice on more space, a loan.
What about incorporating?
And insurance.
Wait, I know who we can call.
Times like this require sound advice. Your lawyer can help. A message from the Illinois State Bar Association.
It's your fault!
Over and over. Time and again.
Drive me nuts! Shut up! You're the dumbest.
Generation after generation.
I hate you. I hate you too.
Isn't it time we stop the cycle? Now.
I hate you.
Stop adult violence. Teach kids peace. A message from the Illinois State Bar Association.
Welcome back to Illinois Law. We are talking about some basic considerations you need to take into account when preparing and filing your tax return. My name is Karen White, today's moderator from the law firm of Smith Amundsen LLC in Chicago. We also have Jamie Krupp with the law firm of Krupp & Krupp in DeKalb, Illinois. We also have Nancy Strauss. She's an attorney here in Chicago with her own law firm, Nancy Franks-Straus LTD. And finally, Larry Krupp, who is currently a director at Kessler, Orlean, and Silver. We left right before the break. We were talking about trying to figure out who to hire. We were talking about tax preparers need to be registered with the IRS. I asked a question during the break. How, as an individual, can I determine if they're actually registered or not? Is there a resource that you know of?
Not
that
yet.
I don't think so. I don't think
Not
there's
yet.
a-
Like Larry said, it's a new requirement effective for 2011 filings.
Okay. All right. So maybe the best thing is to hopefully rely on some references.
Yes.
As to people who've used them in the past. When is it that I would need, Nancy, to hire an actual CPA or somebody like yourself, a CPA/attorney?
Well, as the situation gets more complicated, let's say, for example, I have been downsized and I'm starting my own consulting business. And preferably, it would be wise, right as I'm getting ready to embark on my new career, for me to sit down with a lawyer or a CPA and say, what do I need to do? What do I need to keep track of? What expenses can I deduct? How do I go about tracking my income? You know, what will make things easier at filing time? That's in the perfect world. But otherwise, for the more complicated returns are the ones that have income, you know, perhaps a whole lot of what I call capital gains, stock transactions, you know, page after page of stock transactions, or some losses, or you loaned money to somebody and they didn't pay it back. Maybe that's deductible under the tax law. Just any circumstance where, you know, if you're not prepared to go to the IRS website and review the appropriate, you know, publications and laws,
Sure.
that's when it's time to call an expert.
Right. Or perhaps the year that you retire from your job and you're getting a pension distribution, or you start with your IRA distributions, that would be another good time to have a CPA or an attorney, you know, prepare your return.
All right, so whether I'm going to file my return myself or hire somebody, I need to get together certain information, as I understand. What exactly do I need to get together, Jamie?
Well, for most types of income that you receive, you'll receive a third-party verification of that, whether it's a W-2 for wages that you've earned, or 1099s for bank interest or dividends that you've earned, or from proceeds from a real estate closing. You want to keep those together and keep them in the same place so you don't lose them, or you don't have to request other copies.
How do I get them? I'm sorry to interrupt, but how do they?
The party that's responsible for that will mail them to you. So your bank will mail to you, for example, a 1099 to show you how much interest you've earned, or the servicer for your mortgage will send you a document that will show you how much interest you paid during a year.
All right. Any other documents? There's got to be more than that. What kind of 1099s are there?
Well, there's
besides interest, I understand there's that.
There are a number. If I'm self-employed, chances are someone paid me and they will report it on a 1099 MISC, M-I-S-C, for miscellaneous. There's a 1099B for sale of stocks. And one of the more occurring forms now is something called a 1099C.
Which is?
So something to be on the lookout for. It is issued if any debt was canceled. And by that I mean, let's say that I default on a loan and I can't pay it back, but the lender says, okay, I'll let you settle your $10,000 debt for $3,000. Well, the difference between the $3,000 and the $7,000 will be reported on a 1099-C, and that's taxable income in many circumstances. There are exceptions, but as a general rule, when the bank is, negotiating, they're not going to tell their customer that that's a possible taxable income situation.
Or credit cards too.
Or credit cards. Credit cards especially. And I will also interject that there is a special law if an amount on a mortgage for your principal home, first mortgage, amounts that are forgiven if your house is basically underwater, that is generally not going to be taxable income. But again, generally.
Sure. So there are some exceptions, but it's interesting if it's called income, even though I didn't get $7,000.
Exactly.
Correct.
But you were
Right.
relieved of $7,000 of liability, so that's
Right.
considered an enrichment or
Sure.
income under the tax code.
And I guess that's another reason why maybe you would want to hire somebody who has a little bit more
Yes.
knowledge than reviewing the publications. Whether in your example, Nancy, whether they should have issued a 1099.
That's
Somebody could look at that as well. Correct?
absolutely,
Should.
of whether it was issued in fact, we know we have a colleague who's dealt with that issue where a large one was issued in error.
Okay, so then we were also talking about during the break, what about child care expenses? I'm trying to think of documents that you receive in the mail. We talked about the W-2s or we receive from the employer. Bank statement, 1099s all appear to be coming to you in the mail.
Right.
So we need to keep our lookout, our eyes out for that. What about documents within my household that I need to make sure I'm organizing?
Well, you'll also receive documents for some items that are going to be deductions. You mentioned child care. There is a credit for qualified child care, and if that's the case, your child care provider will provide you with that documentation. The same thing applies also for charitable deductions over $250 cash contributions. The charity must substantiate that to you, so you have that for your records.
Right. But in order to deduct any charitable contribution, you need some kind of receipt or acknowledgement. So if it's under $250 and the charity's not going to send you a letter, then you need to retain copies of your checks or have them available online through your institution, or if you pay via PayPal, a copy of the PayPal receipt. So any charitable contributions, normally you'll be on your own, to
Right.
collect those. Also, if you've got any unreimbursed expenses for being an employee, or if you have expenses in looking for a job, you need to go through your checkbook, save your receipts. It's good, it's like time now to start really doing your 2011 planning too, to set up a folder now, and as you incur expenses, printing up resumes, postage, whatever, to keep the receipts, put them in an envelope, or keep them in a folder now.
Sure.
Right. Going through your checking records and your credit card statements is a good way to find items that you might have missed for charitable deductions or moving expenses.
Did you say living or moving?
Moving expenses or unreimbursed business expenses.
Sure. What else would show up on a credit card? Go ahead, Nancy.
I was
You were
going
going
to
to
say,
say
or
something.
medical
Yeah.
expenses.
Or medical
Well, that's a big one.
expenses. That's right.
Very good.
And
what about medical expenses?
well, medical expenses are a tax deduction. Now, they are subject to a limitation, but generally amounts paid for doctors, dentists, eyeglasses, false teeth, hearing aids, nutritional supplements that are prescribed under a health practitioner's care, health insurance premiums are all parts of medical expenses that generally you can go through your checkbook, or if you have a lot of prescriptions, I recommend going to the pharmacy, and they generally will print out a year-end summary to save you
Sure.
adding up all the amounts.
And then there's something in the code that allows you to deduct it, or?
Medical expenses, qualified medical expenses are
Sure.
deductible.
Unreimbursed from
I'm
your
sorry.
insurance.
Right, unreimbursed by insurance,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's right. So whatever you spent, to the extent that you were reimbursed either from an outside Blue Cross Blue Shield type policy, or if your employer has a health savings account or a flexible spending account. So it's really your net out-of-pocket expense for medical, and it is limited to certain dollar amounts.
All right. We need to end right now. I hope that was helpful. We just tip of the iceberg, I think, what we started here on what you need to consider when you're getting your information together for filing your tax return. Thank you for joining us. I'm Karen White from the law firm of Smith Amundsen.